All right, so today I'm going to be refuting Emily's claim that zoo life is detrimental to animals being housed in zoos. Her three claims are that zoo life lowers animals' longevity. Secondly, that animals are treated inhumanely while being housed in zoos. And thirdly, zoo life causes animals to display aggressive and stressed behaviors. So my response to the first claim of zoo life lowering animals' longevity was firstly that a statistic was quoted that the median age that elephants die in preserves is 56 years. However, it's important to note that this is the median age, so it's not necessarily the average or the most common occurring age. So when you lay out these ages, it's just the age that falls in the middle, not necessarily what we see most often. So that's just something that isn't false or anything, just something important to point out when in that statistic. And additionally, there is a statistic on 20% of lion cubs dying in the wild. However, looking that up on Lion Alert, which is a lion conservation website, up to 80% of cubs die in the wild. So this is caused because of predators, because of disease, and a few other reasons too. So there's some varying statistics on the amount of cubs that die out in the wild. And also, according to an article on Curiosity.com, tigers and giraffes usually live 5 years longer in zoos, and sea lions live up to 10 years longer. So one of the tests of inductive reasoning is if there are exceptions to this case, and there are, because obviously according to that article on Curiosity, some other species do live longer in zoos. However, the statistic that some other animals like elephants do not live longer in captivity is true. So there are exceptions to that. Now, secondly, the second claim was that animals are treated inhumanely while housed in zoos. And this claim is a sweeping generalization because there are exceptions, and this may not be true for all zoos. So an article from the Chicago Tribune explains that medical care for animals has made significant advances. So just like there are medical advances for technology for humans, the same thing applies to animals. So for example, they cited a story of a lizard getting a 3D printed foot and gorillas getting CT scans for their joints. So there's just significant advances being made, and while not all zoos have these resources, this covers the point that not all animals are treated inhumanely. Additionally, there was a statistic from a Wall Street Journal article that was published in 2003, which is kind of old, or actually is pretty old, but it had information about funding going towards landscaping and gift shops while zoos were feeling financial pressure. Now, they made the point that some exhibits do have to close, which is true. One of the things zoos do when they have financial issues is they'll close exhibits because they are a significant cost. However, the article doesn't cover any information about zoos having to providing more resources towards their gift shops or their landscaping, but simply just talks about what zoos do in financial troubles. And then the third claim was that zoo life causes animals to display aggressive and stressed behaviors. So this too is a sweeping generalization because there are exceptions to this. So an article from the American Veterinary Medical Foundation website says that there are other conditions that cause stress, like during the mating season or when animals are being brought into a new environment. So there are other conditions that this stress could be caused by, not necessarily just because of the way they're being treated. Now, it is true, and obviously we've all seen the commercials where animals are in bad places with the sad music playing, that there are zoos and conditions that aren't treating animals correct. However, an article on HowStuffWorks.com claims that care has improved tremendously for the zoos. One example is the barricades that are used to house these animals. Sometimes we see streams or walls, we don't see fences, and there's a lot more separation between humanity and these animals. So, and also some of these animals are given activities to help stimulate their growth, so they're not sitting in the cells not doing anything all the time. So while that doesn't always hold true for all zoos, it's not the same case everywhere, but there are some advances being made. Additionally, on that same article, some of the conditions that these animals come into these zoos is significantly important to note because some of these animals come from circuses where they are treated poorly. So this could also cause their stress. And also some come injured from the wild and have other circumstances that are important to consider. So all things considered, there are some significant points. However, there's some sweeping generalizations because there are exceptions to a lot of these cases. So I think if this argument pointed to some specific cases, or it could pinpoint just these issues a little bit more directly, it would be much more stronger. So thank you.
All right, I want to start right at the end. At the end of your speech, it sounds like you're doing a critique rather than a refutation of the argument, where you're in essence saying, well, here's how you can make your argument really work. And that's, I don't think you want to do that. I think I made the comment, if you were the defense attorney and said, well, here's the evidence that you would have wanted to use to prove that my client was guilty, that's, you'd be guilty of malpractice in that situation. So that's not the point, the direction that you want to go in. I did think that you had good information on each of the individual points. The press on the median versus the other averages, that's an okay press. I like the better arguments that you had subsequently that suggested that there's a wide variety of estimates about how animals die, the percentage of animals that die in the wild, and it seems to be substantially different from what the advocate was talking about. So we can't really assume that animals in zoos are going to be worse off, since we don't really have accurate statistics in the other in the wild. And I think that you made that argument. I think you do want to make that claim a little bit clearer. That's what the evidence seems to be implying there. I did think, for example, that you suggested that clearly the generalization is not accurate, because we've got good examples of animals who do thrive in zoos and do live longer as a consequence. So the generalization that she's making certainly is not as broad as it's presented, and I thought that that was a reasonable challenge on that. And the second issue concerning the treatment of the animals there, I thought you did a good job talking about the medical care that they get. You had a little example about 3D foot for the lizard and CT scan for the gorillas, and the idea that the animals in zoos get this kind of care. Like you said, those are only examples and cases. If you had some more information that showed that zoos are updating all the time, that zoos all have doctors on staff, for instance, some data like that would probably enhance your argument and make it a little bit more generalizable, so that you're not doing the same thing that that you accuse the advocate of doing. We wouldn't want any special pleading going on there. The criticism of the Wall Street Journal article, I assume that's the article that the advocate cited in this particular situation, seems to focus on whether or not they spent the money on something else. I don't know that this gets you that much. I think you've got a better argument to say that zoos are continue to grow, they continue to develop new technology, and especially it's probably not hard to find that there's a lot of social pressure to keep animals in good shape, and that it's vastly different today than it was 30 years ago in zoos, because people are more aware and alert about those kinds of things. That's probably the kind of argument that you needed on that point. And then the last one on the issue of aggression, the idea that they give the animals something to do at the zoo, I like that. I wish they could all knit so we could have sweaters made by gorillas. That would be really cool. And then, like I said, that last bit, you're kind of going off the rails on that. That's not where you want to head. All right, thank you.